In the heart of London's wealth district, where diamonds glitter behind bulletproof glass and watches cost more than homes, two men stepped out of a blue BMW on a warm August afternoon in 2009. They looked like money: tailored suits, slick haircuts, calm eyes. Nothing about them suggested what was about to happen. At 4:40 p.m., they entered Graff Diamonds on New Bond Street. It was a weekday. The store was busy. Staff smiled, expecting wealthy clients. But seconds later, one of the men pulled a handgun. The other shouted orders. Everyone hit the floor. They didn't waste a single movement. They pointed to specific cases, naming pieces they wanted. They had done their homework. They weren't smashing indiscriminately. They were working from a list. Within moments, display cases were emptied of 43 pieces of jewelry, rings, necklaces, earrings, worth nearly £40 million. In less than 3 minutes, they were gone. They walked out calmly, stepped into their BMW, and disappeared into London's chaos. Minutes later, that car was found abandoned. They had switched vehicles, changed routes, and vanished without a trace. Police arrived within minutes, but the robbers had planned every detail. They had even used professional-grade latex prosthetics, full facial disguises crafted by a film industry specialist. When Scotland Yard recovered fragments of the masks, forensic experts were stunned at their realism. It wasn't a local job. It wasn't amateurs. Detectives soon realized this robbery matched a pattern seen across Europe and Asia: clean, fast, and surgical. It was the signature of a network Interpol had been tracking for years, a group known as the Pink Panthers. The name came from a 2003 London heist when a Serbian gang hid a stolen diamond inside a jar of face cream, mimicking a scene from the Pink Panther. Since then, the name has come to represent one of the most prolific and elusive crime syndicates in modern history. Interpol estimates the Pink Panthers are responsible for over $500 million in high-end robberies across the globe: Monaco, Geneva, Tokyo, Dubai, Paris. Some lasted barely a minute. In Dubai, they drove through a shopping mall in broad daylight, smashed through a jewelry storefront, grabbed millions in stones, and fled before anyone could react. In Tokyo, they entered a boutique with polite smiles, then within seconds took $30 million in diamonds. They weren't reckless, they were precise. Many were veterans of the Yugoslav wars. They'd lived through artillery barrages, covert operations, and black markets. To them, a luxury store robbery was a controlled environment: clean, predictable, winnable. The Panthers weren't an organization in the traditional sense. There was no single boss, no written code. They operated as loose cells, bound by trust, kinship, and shared history. Members came from Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, and Croatia. Many had served together in war or smuggling units. When peace came, they didn't disband, they adapted. After the collapse of Yugoslavia, the region descended into chaos. Borders shifted, governments changed, and institutions fell apart. Sanctions and blockades created massive underground economies. Soldiers, smugglers, and profiteers moved goods through secret routes: fuel, cigarettes, weapons. It was an economy built on corruption and survival. When the wars ended, that expertise didn't vanish. It globalized. The same men who once smuggled weapons into Bosnia were now smuggling luxury watches into Switzerland. The same shipping routes used for embargo breaking were repurposed for drugs and diamonds. And from those smuggling routes grew an empire, one that would go far beyond jewel theft. In the early 2000s, global cocaine production was booming. South American cartels were producing record quantities, but the old distribution routes through the Caribbean and Spain were under pressure from US and European law enforcement. The cartels needed new entry points, and the Balkans offered a perfect solution. Why the Balkans? Geography and corruption. The Adriatic coastlines of Montenegro and Albania are filled with hidden coves and shipping ports within easy reach of Italy. The region sits between East and West, a natural bridge for smuggling routes stretching from Turkey to Western Europe. And crucially, Balkan groups were already experienced logisticians. They knew how to move contraband quietly, manage transport fleets, and bribe customs officials. By 2010, Serbian, Montenegrin, and Albanian syndicates were forming direct alliances with South American cartels. They cut out the middlemen, buying cocaine directly from producers in Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. They began moving it through massive container ships bound for Europe. At first, most shipments came through Spain and Italy, but soon traffickers began favoring Belgium's port of Antwerp and the Netherlands' port of Rotterdam, two of the busiest cargo hubs in the world. Both handle millions of containers each year. Customs can only inspect a fraction of them. Balkan traffickers embedded operatives in those ports, dock workers, crane operators, customs officers, anyone who could tip them off about inspections or help extract the right container before it was checked. By the mid-2010s, Europol reports began referring to the Balkan pipeline, a vast trafficking network stretching from Latin America to Western Europe. From ports like Santos in Brazil, ships carried cocaine hidden inside fruit shipments, coffee beans, or industrial equipment. Once the containers arrived in Europe, they were routed to warehouses controlled by Balkan crews in Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. From there, the cocaine was divided and distributed across the continent, to Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, and crucially, the United Kingdom. Though separated by the English Channel, Britain remains one of Europe's most profitable cocaine markets. Annual sales are estimated to exceed $4 billion, with purity levels among the highest in Europe. The National Crime Agency has repeatedly described cocaine as Britain's most lucrative illicit commodity. And behind much of that supply, authorities say, are networks linked directly to the Western Balkans. While the Pink Panthers represented the flashy, cinematic side of Balkan crime, another branch was building an empire in silence, the Albanian cocaine networks. By the late 2010s, Albanian groups had emerged as dominant players in the UK's drug trade. They operated differently from traditional British gangs. They didn't seek headlines, they sought efficiency. They controlled wholesale import, distribution, and street-level supply through small, tightly managed cells. The Albanians understood scale. Instead of fighting for turf in street wars, they focused on logistics, ensuring a constant, high-quality supply at lower prices. Their strategy worked. By 2022, British police estimated that Albanian organizations controlled much of the country's cocaine wholesale market, working hand-in-hand with importers on the European mainland. These groups, often referred to by the NCA as the Mafia Shqiptare, maintain deep connections with both Italian and Balkan networks. Many shipments entering the UK originate from the same ports used by Serbian or Montenegrin traffickers, funneled through contacts in Antwerp or Rotterdam, and then smuggled into Britain by truck or ferry. One major bust in February 2024 exposed just how industrialized this trade has become. At the port of Southampton, customs officers discovered 5.7 tons of cocaine concealed in a banana shipment from South America, the largest drug seizure in British history. Investigators found that the shipment had been routed through multiple European ports before reaching the UK, mirroring the pathways of Balkan-run logistics lines. That single seizure had an estimated street value of nearly £450 million. The success of these groups lies in their structure: decentralized, secretive, and flexible. They avoid unnecessary violence, focusing instead on maintaining supply and reputation. They invest profits into legitimate enterprises: construction, hospitality, real estate, and import-export firms. In cities like London, Birmingham, and Manchester, authorities have traced property purchases, nightclubs, and even used car dealerships back to individuals linked to Balkan syndicates. Law enforcement agencies across Europe have struggled to keep pace. The networks adapt faster than the bureaucracies that pursue them. But there have been breakthroughs. One of Serbia's most powerful traffickers, Darko Šarić, was captured after years on the run. His organization had smuggled tons of cocaine from South America into Europe, laundering hundreds of millions of euros through offshore companies. His arrest was a turning point, proof that no figure, however protected, was untouchable. Then in 2019, Operation Familia, a massive Europol-coordinated investigation, dismantled a Balkan-run air route smuggling cocaine from Brazil to Europe. The operation spanned multiple continents, leading to 16 arrests in Europe, Latin America, and Asia, and the seizure of over a ton of cocaine at a Swiss airfield. In 2024, Spain's Guardia Civil struck again, uncovering one of the largest Balkan-run cartels operating on European soil. Over 8 tons of cocaine were seized, 40 people were arrested, and €50 million in assets, including yachts, luxury cars, and villas, were frozen. The group had links to West Africa and Dubai, using them as intermediate hubs for maritime shipments. And in 2025, Albanian police, backed by Europol, raided several properties in Tirana and Durrës, arresting 10 suspects tied to a cocaine ring moving shipments from Latin America through Hamburg and Rotterdam. Officials said the gang's leader had made over $40 million from a single consignment. Each year, the pattern repeats: new seizures, new arrests, new routes. But the structure remains intact. Britain's role in this story is more significant than it appears. Although the UK is not a major transit point for cocaine entering Europe, it is one of the continent's largest consumers. That demand fuels the entire system. The cocaine found in British cities often begins its journey thousands of miles away, in Colombia's jungles or Brazil's ports, before being handed off to Balkan logistics crews, stored in continental warehouses, and finally sold to UK distributors. British authorities estimate that nearly every major cocaine shipment entering the UK has some connection to organised networks operating out of the Western Balkans or their European partners. The National Crime Agency has identified the infiltration of UK supply chains by Balkan and Albanian groups as one of the most significant organised crime threats facing the country today. Their report in 2023 warned that these organisations have established enduring partnerships with producers and distributors and are deeply embedded in UK criminal infrastructure. These are not the chaotic street gangs of the past. They are multinational enterprises, mirroring legitimate corporations in scale and sophistication. They recruit professionals, accountants, IT experts, logistics coordinators. They use encrypted phones, cryptocurrency, and shell companies to move and clean their money. And while the Pink Panthers captured public imagination with their diamond robberies, the real money and the real power lies in this global narcotics machine. The roots of all this trace back to war. When Yugoslavia collapsed, its people endured years of siege, sanctions, and black market survival. It created an economy of corruption and improvisation. It bred men who understood both violence and business. The same resourcefulness that once kept families alive in blockaded cities now powers global criminal networks. The same smuggling routes that once carried food and ammunition now carry cocaine and cash. It is a tragic evolution, a story of survival turned into enterprise. Today, these groups operate across continents, connecting Latin American cartels with European consumers, coordinating shipments worth billions, and laundering profits into the global economy. They are a reminder that organized crime is not confined to backstreets or gangs. It is a parallel system, running alongside legitimate trade, and in many cases, blending with it. Governments are learning to adapt. Europol, Interpol, and national agencies have begun coordinating more effectively. Joint operations now target entire supply chains rather than isolated couriers. The decryption of secure communications platforms like EncroChat and Sky ECC revealed hundreds of Balkan-linked networks operating across Europe, exposing their internal hierarchies and communications. The National Crime Agency continues to target UK-based cells, while European partners pursue the logistics layers abroad. Yet every time one operation is dismantled, another seems to rise. The sheer profit margins make the trade almost unstoppable. To understand the scale, consider this. A single ton of cocaine purchased in Colombia for $1 million can be sold in Europe for more than $60 million. Even if half is seized, the returns are astronomical. That level of money changes everything. It corrupts officials, destabilizes governments, and undermines law enforcement capacity. The story that began with the Graff Diamonds heist, a bold cinematic act of precision, is now part of a much darker global picture. What started as jewel theft evolved into a multinational drug empire. The same discipline, organization, and audacity that defined the Pink Panthers now fuels the flow of cocaine through Europe's ports and onto Britain's streets. The faces have changed, but the methods remain. Cunning, speed, invisibility. From New Bond Street to Belgrade, from Antwerp's docks to London's nightclubs, the fingerprints of Balkan organized crime are everywhere. It is an empire built on chaos, refined by war and sustained by demand. And as long as that demand exists, for luxury, for wealth, for the next high, the network will adapt, reconfigure, and continue to thrive in the shadows. The diamonds were only the beginning.